So welcome everyone to World Elderbeast Awareness Day, our national virtual event. We are so pleased to be hosting this in recognition of the 20 years of celebrating World Elderbeast Awareness Day. We are pleased that you're able to join us for today's session. We will talk a little bit about the partners that are helping to organize this event after we do our initial land acknowledgement. So I just want to start with our land acknowledgement that we acknowledge that we gather on the traditional territories of a number of First Nations and acknowledge their stewardship of this land and its waters as protectors of its natural abundance throughout the ages. We seek a new relationship with the original peoples of this land that remains their home to this day. May this relationship be one of peace and friendship, based in honor and deep respect. So as I mentioned, this event would not be possible without our event partners. So we are working collaboratively across Canada to host this event annually. The key partners in helping develop this are the Canadian Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse and CanAge, along with our other partners with FARFRO, the Réseau de Prévention de, not French, so I do apologize. We have RPMAFO. We have the Federation of NA, Francophones du Canada, Help Age, the Prevention of Elder Abuse in Manitoba, the Seniors Newfoundland, the Alberta Elder Abuse Council, the Northwest Territories Senior Society, the British Columbia Community Response Networks. And we really appreciate all the work of everyone that has helped us plan this event today. We could not have done it without the collaboration of our community partners. I just want to acknowledge some of these ways that you can optimize your engagement today through our session. So because we have a lot of people online, we do mute the microphones and turn people's cameras off. But in saying that, we do have opportunities for you to engage in the conversation. We have our ASL interpreters with us today because we want to ensure that all of our sessions are accessible for everyone. You can change the layout on your screens by the little grid box on the top of the speakers or the images of on the side, where you can choose which layout you would like, whether that's all presentations or larger screens. You can do that yourselves. And as I mentioned, you can turn the closed captioning on your own screen. You can post information, comments in the chat box. We do encourage everyone to have conversations if there's topics that come up or if you want to share a thought. If you have a specific question for the panelists as we go through the session today, please post that in the Q&A box, and we will be spending time at the end of the session to go through some of the questions to ask the panelist. This is being recorded, and it will be posted on the websites for Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario and the Canadian Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse next week, along with any of the links or documents that are also shared in the chat box today. So you don't need to frankly write everything down. We will be posting those after the session. And just lastly, we do appreciate your feedback. So there will be opportunities for you to complete a very short survey after the event. When you log off, there'll be a pop-up link that you can click onto. We have a QR code that at the end of the presentation that you'll be able to scan. We'll be putting that in the chat box with a link if you want to access that. And following the session, we'll also be sending an email notice to everyone about where you can access the recording, the links, as well as the survey as well. And just as we know that this is a public forum, we do just want to reiterate that we do respect your privacy and confidentiality. So if someone is experiencing an issue that they would like some further information from, about and they need some help or wanting to know where to get resources, please reach out to any of our organizations. But you can contact our organization also if you would like to have some consultations or just talking about your circumstances to see if they can help you in your circumstance. So I have the contact numbers there. You can go to our website at EAPON and you can find out further information as well. At the end of the presentation, I will be listing all of the websites for all of our partners, depending on the jurisdiction that you may be residing in. So I do want to welcome, before I do this, I do want to welcome, Benedict Sheplin from the Canadian Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse to welcome everyone as well.
Thank you, Rayanne. Well, I hope you all can see me and hear me okay. I am joining you from a slightly different setup from usual in a different place as well. Marta and I are in Winnipeg currently. We were there for a community-based senior services conference, which got turned into a tornado watch last night. So adventures abounded, and as Laura pointed out, somehow, pushing through in a storm is a bit in our DNA for people in the sector. So we're here no matter what. I am very pleased to be with you today to celebrate the 20th anniversary of WEAAD and to honor the people who have taken us to, who've brought us here today and who have worked so relentlessly to improve things for us, to bring us happier, healthier, safer aging, no matter where we are in the country. If you are not familiar with my organization, I represent the Canadian Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse, CNPEA, usually based out of Vancouver. We are the only pan-Canadian organization that is entirely dedicated to awareness building, education, and policy work when it comes to the mistreatment of older adults so that we can have a coordinated approach across the country when it comes to elder abuse and neglect. So again, this is a network. So it is based entirely on the contributions and the support of partners, individual partners, organizational partners, national, provincial, territorial, local, that truly bring a wealth of knowledge and resources and exchange with us together, who have made our network what it is for the past 26 years. So if you want to learn more about CNPEA, I encourage you to visit our website, cnpea.ca. We're also on social media around with the same handle, CNPEA. If you are, I'll just do a very quick plug. If you are francophone or bilingual and interested, we are also hosting an event in French on June 15th. And this will be with our francophone partners, the Fédération des aînés et aînés francophones du Canada, Fédération des aînés francophones de l'Ontario et Réseau de prévention de la maltraitance des aînés francophones de l'Ontario. And Entente Égale Canada. No, Entente Education Canada. Which language am I speaking? I don't know. It is a bit strange today. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling and let Laura take over so we can launch into our panel today. Thank you so much for being with us.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all the work that Benedict does in collaboration with Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario in hosting and planning this the event. And we hope that you enjoy today's session, which is going to be moderated by Laura Tamblin-Watts. And many of you probably are very familiar with Laura. Laura is the CAO of CanAge, and the Canada's National Seniors Advocacy Organization, and a global expert on aging. And her work focuses on aging, inclusion, and justice. Laura is a lawyer and was called to the bar in 1999. Her academic roles as an assistant professor at the University of Toronto underscores her commitment for shaping the future of those working in the field. She is known as a recognized leader in this work. She has lots of accolades and lots of awards. And if you haven't had her book and read it, the Let's Talk About Aging Parents, I encourage you to read it. It's great. So I'm going to turn it over to Laura to facilitate today's session.
What an honor and a privilege, in particular, to share this time with all of you today. You will see, I think, in the chat that we have representatives from coast to coast to coast. Be active in the chat. This is our time together. And so feel free to share some of the experiences that you have, some of the successes and challenges that you're experiencing right now. This is part of us coming together as a community and celebrating where we've been, where we are, and where we're going to go. And you're going to hear that a little bit as well throughout our time today. Part of what many of you will remember when we cast our minds into the past is a crazy idea from a wonderful woman named Dr. Elizabeth Podniak. And please let us know in the chat if you had the experience over some of your years connecting and engaging with Liz or Dr. Elizabeth Podniak. I remember the day that she came to me and said, you know what? We're going to have a United Nations recognized day, not just in Canada, but the whole world. And we're going to call it WEAAD. And I'm an optimist by my nature. And even I looked at Liz and said, I don't really know if that's a thing that's going to actually work, Elizabeth. I don't really think that we can maybe start at the national level and get the entire world to recognize WEAD. But guess what? Here we are today celebrating the 20th anniversary of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Tell us in the chat what you're doing in your local area to acknowledge and celebrate it. Tell us, put your links in the chat. I know that there are parades happening in New Brunswick. I know there's community teas happening in some parts of Northern Ontario. I know that trees are being planted on Vancouver Island. Share with us a little bit in the chat of what you're doing to celebrate World Elder Abuse Awareness Day in your community. This is really a time, and we specifically don't host this event on June 15th because we know how busy each and all of you are. It is through inspirational leaders like Dr. Elizabeth Podniak that we get our energy. And many of us know that we are being perhaps judged and measured a little bit, that we know that those who came before us expect us to continue on with the energy and momentum. We're going to talk today at a really pragmatic level about things that are happening at the grassroots level, really, really local community-based work that's happening. We're going to talk what's happening provincially and territorially. We're going to check in with what some of those pan-Canadian or national approaches that we're doing here are. And then we're going to add a new element. And this is a really exciting time to add that element. We're going to talk about how the work that we're doing in Canada and as Canadians are contributing to a global change, to the drafting of a United Nations Convention on the rights of the older person. And we're going to be providing a new award, which is recognizing that incredible change on this 20th anniversary. Many of you will know that this is a special day for me at CanAge because this is a day where our Minister for Seniors or Secretary of State for Seniors acknowledges leaders in our field for the often tireless and unreported work that they do. And it is with enormous pleasure that I get to introduce our Secretary of State for Seniors, Stephanie McLean. I am putting here in the chat her formal bio, which is very modest, as is she. Yes, she is the person who is representing very ably Esquimalt Saanich and Suk. And yes, she did pick up the call and decided to run in the spring of 2025. But many of you may not know that she did it only after volunteering to support, frankly, anybody in that riding. And she was tapped on the shoulder and said, "Thank you for your volunteerism. Will you do more?" And that is the story of Stephanie McLean. Thank you for volunteering. Will you do more? Because she always has her hand up first. She ran and was successful in representing her riding in Alberta at a time where, frankly, that was quite a different government in Alberta than previously had been seen before. And she didn't just work as a policymaker and a legislator. She actually brought her lived experience and made that change. And you'll see that in the chat, I put not just her law degree in there and not just her elections in there, but the fact that when she actually gave birth at a time, they had to rethink what was maternity and paternity and parental leave going to be like. She led from personal lived experience, and she wasn't afraid to bring her entire self to her public role. And when she was elected and brought into the role of Secretary of State for Seniors, she continued that, I think, more than she perhaps has ever done before, and has thrown herself into this work with a passion, has educated herself even more than she previously was, has championed aging at an academic level, a policy level, a legislative level, and a grassroots level. She doesn't just cut ribbons and shake hands. She gets in with the dirt and she leads with her whole self. And it is really, truly my honor to say at the international level, this is our leader for seniors. And it's nice to be able to say that as a Canadian, particularly when Canadians are playing such an important global role. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our Secretary of State for Seniors for her remarks today and to present some very special awards.
Wow, Laura, that was really special. Thank you. I started to tear up as I was remembering having my son in the Alberta legislature, and your way of telling it. I'm going to have to bring you with me, I think, now to every public speaking event so you can introduce me. It's really a pleasure to be with you today as we mark the 20th anniversary of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. I was honored to join you last year, and I'm so proud to be back again. And last year, I joined you just weeks after being sworn in as Secretary of State for Seniors. I didn't even know where the coffee pot was. But since then, I've undertook to learn as much as I can. I'm still learning, but it's been really one of the best experiences of my life. And I've learned a great deal about aging, both the challenges and the joy. It has been a great joy, really, for me to meet so many seniors and advocates and experts across the country. And it's shown me how energized and committed this community is. It also has really exposed for me how very true it is that seniors and elders are really the backbone of our communities. It has been and continues to be a privilege to be your representative in government. Dare I say, this is the best job in the government of Canada. And this year's theme, Be Bold, Age with Attitude. I love that. It calls on us to challenge ageism and to see aging as a time of strength, resilience, and opportunity. It reminds us that growing older must always come with dignity, respect, and inclusion. And at the same time, we must face an important truth, that elder abuse remains a serious and ongoing issue that deserves more awareness. And that it can take many forms. Most often we think of physical, but it's also emotional and financial. And it is more often than not hidden and unreported. Behind the statistics are people that we care about. Our parents, our grandparents, our neighbors, our colleagues, whose safety and dignity are at risk. Last month, I had the privilege for the first time in my life of going to Iqaluit, and I was co-hosting the Federal Provincial Territorial Forum with Premier Maine from Nunavut, as well as other ministers responsible for seniors. And that was a really eye-opening experience for me of how elders and seniors are living in the North. And it brewed in me a commitment, a further commitment, a new commitment to do more for our elders and particularly those in the North. And during that meeting, as a group, we committed to establishing a dedicated working group focused on powers of attorney. This collaborative initiative aims to strengthen protections and develop strategies to prevent the financial mistreatment of seniors and elders across Canada. Just yesterday, I spoke with a senior who has a power of attorney, and her name is Judy, and she's from Sault Ste. Marie. She very sadly lost her life savings to an online scam. I believe it was over $1 million. And unfortunately, her story is not unique. We see these stories in the paper regularly. And this goes to show that financial abuse is really one of the most common forms of mistreatment of older Canadians. And Judy wants her experience to be known. She wants her experience to not be for nothing. She wants it to mean something and for it to help prevent what happened to her from happening to others, because it undermines independence and has devastating consequences far beyond financial loss. Judy really sadly talked about her desire to end her life and her plans to do so. And it was the intervention of a friend who helped put her on a more optimistic path, one that I'm going to try and support and that our government is going to do our best to support. But we know that older people can be especially vulnerable, particularly when the abuse comes from someone they trust, such as a family member or a caregiver. And that's why we're taking action. So last year, I worked really closely with Secretary of State Wayne Long, and the results of that work, the first thing I said to him, and I might have told this story last year at our first cabinet retreat, is, Wayne, we have to do something to protect seniors from financial scams and fraud. My work in the Alberta legislature, a lot of it was around consumer protection and protecting people from scams and frauds. And I've heard too many stories in my own personal circles over the years of my friends' parents, in particular, being taken advantage of. So we worked together, and that resulted in launching the National Anti-Fraud Strategy. And as I've told you how this came about, I can tell you seniors are at the center of that strategy. They are what catalyzed the interest in putting that strategy together, and they remain at the center in terms of looking at who it is that we are serving. And as part of the strategy, we're also developing a code of conduct to help prevent economic abuse, including coercion. But we are also investing in digital skills. And this is one of the things that I heard from Judy about, actually. Judy said that it would have been really helpful for her to have some classes at her local senior center where she attends that talks about how these frauds and scams prey, particularly on seniors, what they look like, what to watch out for, and how to deal with them. So we're taking what action we can at the federal government on that. And part of that is through Minister Evan Solomon, who recently announced the AI for All strategy. And this is going to provide free AI literacy training to help Canadians, including older adults, navigate the digital world more safely. We know, though, that staying connected helps protect older adults, and a lot of them are finding that connection online. And that is why we need to, work towards this AI literacy, but also strengthen community ties, like in-person community ties, to reduce social isolation and reduce the risk of mistreatment. And this is, for me, really where my key program comes in, and that's the New Horizons for Seniors program. And you're probably all quite familiar with it. Applications for the community-based stream. This is the stream where it supports seniors getting together in person and doing various activities, including maybe having a digital literacy training. And those applications are open. They open June 2nd, and they're open until July 14th. And this year, I made quite a few changes to the New Horizons for Seniors program. And one of the important changes is that we're doubling the maximum funding. So it was $25,000 per project, and now it's $50,000 per project. And one of the meaningful changes that, wasn't in the headlights of the announcement, but it means a lot to senior servicing organizations, is that there is extra credit when we're sort of scoring the applications for organizations that have seniors at the center of it. So seniors are part of their mission, part of their values, and so that they are organizations that are focused on seniors. And so this will help better support innovative community-driven solutions and strengthen the organizations that seniors rely on every day. Looking at your gathering today, I'm particularly excited about today's panel. It brings together leaders who are driving this kind of progress. And I love these opportunities to bring everyone together because we get that cross-pollination that betters all of us across the country. And I know that their insights on the panel today will spark those important conversations and discussions and cross-pollination. The future of aging in Canada is everyone's future. With any luck, knock on wood, it will be mine as well. And while we've made progress, there's certainly more to do. As you mark this 20-year milestone, we need to continue to work. I need to continue to work, and we all do, on challenging ageism, preventing abuse, and supporting older Canadians so that they can live with dignity and respect. So now I have the privilege and honor of focusing on one of my favorite parts of today and one of my favorite parts from last year. I have the honor of announcing the recipients of the Elizabeth Podnieks Award for Elder Rights in Canada. This award recognizes outstanding leadership in advancing the rights of older people and contributions to elder justice and community development. I'm proud to announce that this year, the award is going to two people, Rayanne Rideout and Marta Hayek. Two fabulous women that I've had the opportunity to get to know over the last year. Together, Marta and Rayanne have transformed Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario into more than a provincial organization. They have made it a model for the world. Under their leadership, the organization doesn't just respond to elder abuse, it prevents it by building communities where seniors feel valued, connected, and empowered. First, Marta Hayek is Executive Director of Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario. Since joining in 2013, she has helped transform the organization into a provincial, national, and international leader in elder rights advocacy. She has led Ontario's strategy to combat elder abuse and strengthened partnerships across more than 30 elder abuse networks throughout the province. Marta has served with the Canadian Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse, the Ontario Securities Commission Seniors Expert Advisory Committee, the International Longevity Centre Canada, among others. She has also addressed the United Nations advocating for a convention on the rights of older persons. But beyond her advocacy, Marta is a classically trained musician. She's an environmental volunteer and a passionate supporter of healthy, joyful aging. And Rayanne is Director of Strategic Partnerships at Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario and a founding member of the organization since 2002. I won't tell you what I was doing in 2002. It's not nearly as impressive. With nearly 3 decades in the nonprofit sector, she has helped shape elder abuse prevention across Ontario and Canada. Rayanne has built strong partnerships across justice, policing, government, and community sectors. As former co-chair of the Canadian Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse, she has helped guide national standards in the field. She is also recognized as a leading educator and mentor. teaching generations of professionals about aging, vulnerability, and elder abuse prevention. Rayanne is widely known as the backbone of elder abuse education in Canada. She's hardworking, innovative, and deeply compassionate. I would now like to turn to each of Rayanne and Marta for a few words. Over to you.
Thank you so much. It is an honor to accept this award. Marta, I can go, I want to just say a few words and then I'll turn it over to Marta. So thank you so much, Honorable Stephanie McLean, and also to Laura and CanAge for this award. It's humbling, and knowing the prior recipients who have esteemed accomplishments over the past years who have got this award, to be in the same limelight is very touching to me. And also to be receiving this with my boss, I guess. My CEO for Elder Abuse Prevention Ontario is also a tremendous leader, as many of you know. So it's an honor to receive this in collaboration with Marta. I knew Elizabeth, as many of you, online for many, many, many years. I also remember that first day that I had met her as a student, I think, back in the day, and just recognized the contributions, knowing her as a friend and also as a colleague working in this field. And launching the strategy in Ontario, being involved in the consultations that she speared with the government to get those to get the movers and shakers into the rooms and the funding to dedicate to the issue. The contributions that she made over a lifetime are immense, and it's a privilege to have had worked alongside her, knowing that the changes and work that she had done to change people's attitudes and actions to respect older adults and prevent abuse. I hope I can continue in her footsteps, following her passion and enthusiasm and her knowledge to support the efforts and research, dissemination of knowledge, and empower other seniors and those working in the field of aging to continue promoting the rights of older adults. I had the privilege of working with this organization because of Dr. Podnieks. She was the founder of EAP, at that time was known as the Ontario Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse, known now as EAPO. So working for this organization for the past 23 years would not have been possible without the leadership of Dr. Podnieks. So I just want to, again, encourage everyone to get involved, knowing that her work, that we can all play a role in continuing her legacy and pathways that she created. So I think now more than ever, we need to continue to foster the rights of older adults and rights of everyone, and unite and foster future generations and trailblazers in elder abuse prevention. So thank you again. Marta?
Thank you, Rayanne. And thank you, Secretary and Laura, for your kind words, and congratulations received from people online for receiving this prestigious recognition. I'm deeply honored to receive this award bearing the name of our founder, whose vision, courage, and unwavering advocacy helped shape the elder abuse prevention movement globally. Her determination challenged us to see that elder abuse is a violation of human rights and dignity. Her legacy continues to inspire us each day. But this recognition, as Laura said, is not mine alone. It reflects the dedication of an extraordinary team and countless partners and advocates keeping seniors safe from harm. Together, we contribute what we can, knowing that meaningful changes happen through collaboration. It's a privilege to join the company of esteemed past recipients, Benedict. As we mark WEAAD 20, let us recommit ourselves to those entrusted to our collective care. Thank you all for this tremendous honor. I accept with the greatest humility and in recognition of all entrenched in this vital work, so that all seniors can enjoy the highest possible quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta and Rayanne. I now have the distinct honor of inaugurating a brand new award today, the Elder Rights in Canada International Impact Award. This award was established this year to recognize the incredible leadership Canadians are making on issues of elder abuse and mistreatment on a national and international scale. And I'm so pleased to announce that this year's recipient is Margaret Gillis. Knowing Margaret and the work that she does, I think we can all agree that she is so deserving of this award. She is the founding president of the International Longevity Centre Canada and a global leader in elder rights advocacy. She helped establish Canada's Age-Friendly Communities Initiative, which now reaches more than 900 communities nationwide and many. Margaret, the World Health Organization, and global policy forums. Through her leadership, Canada has become an internationally respected voice on aging, dignity, and elder rights. Her work has consistently reinforced the message that elder rights are human rights. I'll now turn it over to the award's first ever recipient, Margaret, for a few words.
Thank you so much, Secretary of State McLean, for those very kind words, and to Laura Tamblyn-Watts, a leader I admire, and to CanAge for this tremendous honor. I'm really proud to work alongside organizations like CanAid, Help Age Canada, CNPEA and EAPO, and so many others who have committed fully to enhance the human rights of older persons here in Canada and around the world. I'm deeply grateful to be recognized for this award, and I accept it on behalf of all older Canadians and advocates whose passion and determination inspire progress and hope for a more inclusive future. Together, we are making Canada and the world a better place to grow old. And I'm so honored, and thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. Marta, Ryan, and Margaret represent the very best of Canadian leadership and advocacy for older adults. Their work has transformed how we prevent elder abuse, support healthy aging, and uphold the dignity and rights of older people in Canada and internationally. Congratulations to all three of you, and thank you for your dedication to older Canadians. It has been an absolute pleasure for me to be with you again today, this year. Thank you again for the invitation and for the important work that you do every day. I now, unfortunately, cannot stay with you. I have to go into the House of Commons, where I will be until midnight. So please keep me in your prayers. I would rather be with you, but thank you very much for the opportunity to, the auspicious opportunity to grant these awards today and to be part of this 20th anniversary. Thank you so much.
Secretary of State, I hope that this good feeling will sustain you, because I'm not sure what else is going to sustain you as you continue to govern the country into tomorrow, I think, on that. And we are so appreciative. You are always there for us. You are at every local community organization. You are at every provincial and territorial meeting. You are leading some of those meetings. And I know that your work at the international level is just beginning. We thank you so very much for your time. And we really appreciate you handing out these awards. It's so meaningful to have you with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Bye.
Bye. She's got to go govern the country, everybody. But that's not going to be the only thing that we do today. Of course, we have our wonderful panel in front of us. And this, for me, is one of the most important things that happens all year long. And in our panel, we really see that range from local, real grassroots to thought leadership to thinking about things at that pan-Canadian level. And I'm going to introduce briefly all of them to the stage, and I'm going to ask them all just to join when they hear their names. I'm going to put their bios in as well. I'm not going to take too much time on their bios because, as you can imagine, every one of them is very robust. So I'll put their full bios in the chat. But I would like to first introduce Moira Walsh, who I think just about everybody knows across this country, political journalist, Toronto Star leader, award-winning, #1 best-selling author, and again, a brand new author with her new book out, constantly at the forefront of both thought leadership and telling the stories of Canadian seniors and all persons as we age. Arlene, I'd like to invite you to the stage. Well, Arlene's worn a million different hats as well, but retired consultant from Healing Approaches to Elder Abuse and Mistreatment, and globally recognized for her work, thinking about other ways to come at elder abuse reconciliation, thinking about different ways of mediation, trying to find ways for communities and families and circles of care to really play a productive role, sometimes in healing broken relationships. I'm inviting back Margaret Gillis, of course, founding president at International Longevity Centre Canada, and of course, one of our real limelights internationally. And you've heard her bio as well. You'll see it in the chat briefly. And it's also a very special thing for me to invite Don Thomas, who's the coordinator of the Digby and Area Senior Safety Program, and also with the RCMP for more than 20 years. And you really see in this a whole range of very, very grassroots, all the way up to that international step today. So again, their full bios are going to be in the chat and further well. But I'm going to jump into the day. I want to set the stage. So we're going to talk around citizens and advocates, professionals and leaders taking an active role in tackling aging and elder abuse. These folks here we've got on the panel are going to inspire us. They're going to help us think about different ways that we can do the work in our communities and how we're changing the narrative around aging, which is as much of a problem as really anything else we have. And today's theme really celebrates that. Be bold, age with attitude. It invites us not just to celebrate the progress, but we got to challenge those basic assumptions. We've got to look at ageism in the face, and we've got to imagine that better future for us as we are going to be aging. And so we're going to use this framework, then, now, and next. And we're going to talk about how being bold and aging with attitude is going to be the thing that's going to take us through our next session. So we welcome the audience. Please stay for a full session. Be active in the chat. Everybody that is going to be able to convey their own thoughts, their own ideas. Let us know what you're thinking when you're thinking of it. Share what's happening for you as well. So heading into our questions and answers, I have been able to set the stage, I hope. I am now going to turn over to our panel. Okay, with that. Now, I can do it a couple different ways, but I thought I would give everyone a little bit of a round to introduce themselves and give a little bit of an opening, and then I'm going to get into some of that moderated discussion, if that's all right with everybody else. All right, very good. With that, if I could, I will also invite Moira to take the stage a little bit, give us a little bit of a kickoff. Tell us what you're thinking about, what you've been doing, and please, if you don't promote your book, I'm going to. So why don't you make sure to do that as well?
Thank you, Laura. And I want to apologize in advance. I can't seem to get rid of my email, so it will ping every now and then when I am speaking and unmuted. So there's some ghost email in the background, but hopefully no one sends me any messages for this next few minutes. My name is Moira Welsh. I'm a journalist with the Toronto Star. I've been at the Star for a very long time. And for the last 3 years, prior to me joining the political bureau at Queen's Park, I led what we call the Third Act Project at the Toronto Star, and that was created by our publisher, Jordan Bitov, who is very interested in issues related to older adults. And so we explored a lot of different issues around aging and how we were made great efforts to hold institutions and governments to account for the struggles and challenges, for example, around home care, or long-term care and housing. And we also did a podcast called How to Live to 100 or Die Trying. But I think what I'm really most immersed in and what I spent so much time thinking about during those years is what ended up becoming a book. And it's my book called The Astonishing Lives of Older Women. And it's ostensibly about the gender pension gap, but it really delves into a lot of different issues around being an older woman. It could be related to the fact that we live longer on less money than men, or it could be around just different issues related to this new longevity and the need for friendships. But there's a lot of information packed into that, and I'm really excited to say that it's starting to create new conversations as I go around on book tours, and I find that very hopeful for future discussions.
And I have to say, I love this book so much that when I got the manuscript to read, she was so kind to let me read an advance copy. I started writing all of these things, why it was so important and why we needed to do it. And I'm now proselytizing this. I hand this book out to just about everybody I know. And It is so important that we tell the stories of older women, and really appreciate you picking that up. Arlene, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Maybe dig into
Sure.
some of your past, your now, and your future.
Oh boy. Well, first of all, thank you, Laura, and it's an honor to be part of this panel. And I will say that I've retired multiple times and I keep being pulled back. Anyhow, I was a case manager with the Community Care Access Center for over 20 years. Core to my practice was the belief that older adults have the right to to age with honor, dignity, and respect. And what I saw back in the day was that there was a reluctance to disclose abuse, there was a failure to intervene, and older adults refused police and court intervention. And so at some point, I will tell you what I did, but basically, I pioneered restorative justice as a way of addressing elder abuse. I was a founding member of an elder abuse response team, worked with a detective, and I also initiated Age-Friendly Waterloo in 2009 as a strategy for the prevention of elder abuse. So I don't know when you want me to talk about a few of these things, or you want to just hold off for now.
I'm going to come back because we're going to dig into each one of those things. But anyone who asks, what are different ways to be thinking about how we engage in amelioration, often in healing relationships that sometimes people want to keep, I say, let me tell you about Arlene. Well, let me tell you about Dawn. But first, I'm going to actually make her tell a little bit about herself first. And if she leaves anything out, which I know she will, I'm going to fill out because Dawn's just down the street from me right now. So I'm almost proverbially waving at her. Dawn, please take a minute, and we'd love to hear a little bit about what you do and what you've done. And maybe we'll set up the stage about what you're going to do next.
Hey, Laura, thanks for the invite. And so my name is Dawn Thomas, and I have been doing what's called in Nova Scotia as senior safety programs. I've been doing it for 20 years, 20 years WEAAD, 20 years senior safety. How cool is that? And I'm very happy to be here. So what we do is we work with seniors to do preventative work with police. So we're all associated with the police, with frauds and scams and elder abuse prevention. And we've been doing it in Nova Scotia since 1996. And I'm really, really excited to be part of this special group of people. We are very lucky that we don't need to have consent. We don't have to have checklists. We can go in with the police if people are living at high risk, and we can do, as Arlene taught me many years ago, restorative approaches to taking care of seniors. And it's so cool to be able to do that. Yeah, you can tell more if you want.
Yeah, that's probably the shortest version that I've ever heard. What I would love to just say is when we're talking about what is local and we're talking about what is grassroots, and frankly, what we're talking about is rural, I say,
Yes.
let me tell you about the work that Dawn does. I'm in a community right now of 72 people. We lost one who was 95 after a wonderful life, but we got a baby, so we kept the sign the same. And that is probably one of the larger communities that Dawn works with. And yet she also has to advocate in a provincial level. And I know that you actually continue your advocacy also onwards from that. But it is a really different thing to advocate in a small island community or a rural community outside of a major center. And that major center is only a couple thousand people than if it is in your downtown Toronto or downtown Montreal. And that story is really important. And we're glad that we're going to be able to call upon you to learn more about it. Margaret, you have worked at every off level, every single level, and you're spending a lot of time, and we're not letting you stop spending a lot of time raising up the voices and the rights of older persons, Canadians, but also all older persons. So tell us a little bit about, back then, now, and what's in the future with you.
Well, thanks, Laura. I came out of government. I retired in 2013 after 31 years, and the last 10 were in the area of aging. And I fell in love with the topic for all the reasons. All of you are activists, and all of you are on this call because it's an amazing topic, and there's a lot of work to be done. In that 24 years, I can tell you there's been many challenges, a good number of those which continue today, I'm sorry to say. And I believe then, as I do now, that we as a society have been very slow to respond to the great gift that is longevity. So one challenge that I am glad we addressed back in the early 2000s was how we enhance the opportunities to promote the health of older people and to help them live more fully in their communities through the Age-Friendly Cities and Communities program. I think in my view, it's a classic example of a successful health promotion program, which is why it came out of the Public Health Agency of Canada. And we can explore later when we talk about the future, the directions it's going in terms of attacking ageism and helping to promote the human rights of older persons. But I want to talk a little bit about the past, because that's your question. In the early days of Age Friendly, we actually had absolutely no idea how successful it would be, or that 21 years later, we'd be speaking as we are today in a meeting with activists from across the country, and that it would become an active program across the entire globe. Indeed, we really thought of the program as a method just to get cities and communities to address the needs of older persons. And it was one of those, as all things were in those days, of kind of offering something to older persons as opposed to something that they innately deserve as a human right. And it's very reflective of the times. It was reflective of the growth of the number of older persons worldwide and the great migration happening to cities. And the World Health Organization was dealing with both of those events. And looking back, it's not surprising, as I said, that Canada was a leader, because we were really, and it was something Canadians should be proud of, we had a long history in health promotion, starting with the Lalonde Report in 1974. It was groundbreaking, which made Canada the first modern government to acknowledge that health is not just the healthcare system, but health promotion and disease prevention. It was really quite revolutionary. And then it was followed by the EPS report that emphasized the link between health and economic status, dealing with challenges and inequities, and extending the scope of prevention to helping people cope with the circumstances that lead to ill health, something that had not been dealt with by governments before. And this all culminated in the Ottawa Charter for Health Promotion, on which the Age-Friendly Cities was based. Simultaneously, the World Health Organization introduced the concept of age-friendly regarding healthcare centers, and they consulted with older persons and used their voice on those recommendations and policies. And they moved that concept, the age-friendly cities piece. So Canada funded the research with the Public Health Agency and with its researcher, Louise Plouffe. And in those times, it was very precarious to find funding. And sometime I will tell you the wild story of how it happened, but we were very lucky that we got funding. And I think one of the key aspects that also led to the success of the age-friendly program was that we consulted with older persons. The original study was done in 33 cities, 4 of which were Canadian. I think one of the interesting thing about it is how universal it was, because I remember consulting with on the project in Udaipur, India, and I was surprised about the comments that they said were exactly what I just heard in Halifax. You need to be an Olympic sprinter to get across the street in Delhi and in Halifax. And it seems that surly bus drivers that hit the gas before you can sit down is also international. And our world really is so much smaller, and we found so much of the same information coming from older persons. And thank God we listened to their voices, because it really, as I said, is the grounding of it. It's also the only program in the entire time I worked in the federal government of Canada where the provinces hopped on without asking for funding. They saw what it could do, and they changed that. So, we have it now, and I gave you that little history just to see that interesting progression. And I'm not at all surprised that age-friendly cities were supported by the health promotion system, because it's grounded and linked to health, but it's also grounded and linked to the community. In other words, those of you who work in age-friendly are not only frontline health promoters, but I would argue that you are addressing ageism and are the bedrock of the protection of the human rights of older persons. So thanks.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. We've been hearing a little bit about our past and what some of the things that we have been both successful on. I mean, I think Age Friendly, for that matter, WEAAD is one of those examples of things that started, and you don't always know what's going to catch on. And I think that that's a really important lesson. And sometimes you just have to start a thing. It doesn't always have to be perfect. And yet the extraordinary scope of some ideas that catch on, and they don't always catch on right away, but all of a sudden they can. And I'm going to move to Dawn and Moira, but just on that level, Moira, you've seen things catch on over the course. You've been telling stories for a long time. You've been telling stories of older persons for a long time. You started talking about women recently. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that we could have talked about women until the cows come home and no one was listening. But something's catching on about that, isn't there, right now? Can you speak to us a little bit about both why you think the narrative of older women now and maybe a little bit about what's concerning about their experiences of growing older. Like, what are we in that conversation of now?
You're muted. Muted.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you for raising that, Laura. Very good point. So I found it really interesting when I started doing this research, and it began when somebody emailed me and said, there are a lot of older women who are struggling. We can't afford to live. And we're starting to move in together because it's our only way of surviving. And so I thought, okay, this seems really, really interesting. So I started doing research and I thought, more people I spoke to, their stories were so incredibly profound and they were all very universal as well. So that's why I thought I would do a book on it. But I, at the same time, started writing stories for the Toronto Star on that issue. And what was incredibly compelling to me was the readership of those stories. And the first one that ran in early 2023, for this type of story, it's not a crime story, but it's a story on aging and issues. The readership was off the charts, and the comments on the stories were off the charts. And I thought, I think older women want to see themselves represented, and they have not been represented in the media, not in a way that really gets to the issues that matter to them. And so that's why I continue to explore this and go deeper and deeper. And I think now moving forward, there's a lot more to say on this issue. The book and my articles at the Star explore the incredible financial struggles that we have. And, we think about aging and we think about, okay, lifting weights, staying healthy, walking, staying, being in a community. We don't think about our financial well-being. And that's a whole other conversation that could frankly start with people in their 20s so that they don't have to actually have some of the experiences that a lot of women are having in their much older years.
And we are starting to talk about longevity as well as aging. And I think part of that narrative is letting us talk about different ages and stages, right? We're hearing about menopause and perimenopause and how that affects health and well-being, and health and wealth. You talk a lot about as being really just one consonant away from each other. And I really appreciate that. Dawn, you have a lot where you're looking at people's health and their wealth. Can you give us a bit of a snapshot about what are you seeing right now and what's worrying you at that real local level?
I'm going to tell you, I appreciate you talking about rural communities earlier, Laura, because there's a lot of challenges with transportation, access to resources, access to internet, getting online applications for housing, for whatever kind of assistance we need. It's becoming very difficult for seniors to navigate. So I get to go out and help with that. What I'm really noticing a lot of right now is caregiver burnout. Caregivers are exhausted, especially if it comes to domestic violence and dementia. The criminal code doesn't allow for us to be flexible in taking care of caregivers. And sometimes caregivers or the person they're caring for gets put on conditions where they have to not be in the home, and that's really challenging. So I get to kind of navigate through that too with them. Capacity assessments are very difficult to get in rural communities. Having a doctor is very difficult to get sometimes, as you know. And the minister mentioned financial abuse. So powers of attorney, theft, and misuse is very popular. And again, our community, we have 3 banks, and I'm lucky to know all the bank managers to help with that. The other challenge I'm seeing is isolation and fear of being placed. People don't want to call for help because they don't want to get sent to a nursing home or a hospital, which is too bad, because we want them to stay at home for as long as possible. And the other limitation I'm going to say is sometimes the policies for care are restricting. You have to put your cats away, and some people can't put their cats away to get the care that they need to stay at home for longer. Yeah, so there are some really real challenges, I think, that are not relational and that are not holistic for people that in rural areas.
And I have to tell you, we really understand the importance of those relationships. You know, the three bank managers,
I do.
as
Yeah.
long as we have those banks,
Yeah, that's
right?
right.
If you were looking for a green colored bank, the closest place is an hour and a half drive
That's right.
away for most people.
Hmm.
And those personal relationships sometimes really require that bricks and mortar place for people to go to and to connect to. And as we're moving to that increasingly online world, Dawn, can you talk? You talked a little bit about transportation, but can you speak a little bit about the level of, let's call it telecom connectedness that people have, and particularly if they're older persons who may have some financial constraints, right?
Oh, there are financial constraints. And as you know, from getting to our primary center to the farthest outreaches is 2 ferries away. And that's an hour and 20 minutes. And if they have to go to the hospital, that's going to be a 2 hour drive, right? It's very difficult. And I don't know in your area, the cell service isn't so great. And the internet service isn't so great. The fact that you're even online right now and I know where you live is pretty cool. So
Well,
there are
you
some,
couldn't call me, but I'm because I don't have any cell service where I am right now,
no.
and that is a reality for a lot of folks, and particularly when we're thinking about designing a future that's an inclusive future, we have to remember that even if you were a very savvy tech senior, as many seniors are, that tech only answers are exclusionary answers, and increasingly, if we have 2 FA and 3 FA financial requirements, people don't have the money to have those things, where they can't get the service to do it.
Well,
So
and interestingly enough, the cybersecurity situation, seniors are on Facebook. And you know what? I tell them in my fraud presentations, guess what, guys? Jesus is not on Facebook. Like, don't do the amen stuff because you're going to get scammed.
it's absolutely true. Arlene, you spent your life in community and bringing projects. I mean, I don't know how many pilot licenses you must have gotten from all the pilot projects that you probably had, from the pilot projects, and some really took off. I'm a huge fan of your restorative justice project, but could you just share us a little bit about where some of those piloting things that you may have done, where they are right now, and what have you seen in terms of what's picked up and what hasn't picked up?
Okay, thank you. I want to go back to age friendly because that, when I was at the World Congress, I was just like blown away. This is a strategy for the prevention of elder abuse and will address root causes. And I mobilized the community. And in 2009 is when we had our first mayor's forum. I was chair of a committee that I didn't have any committee members for, but we managed to get it together. And actually, it was just a second, I'm missing her name at the moment. Oh, Jane Barrett. It was Jane Barrett came on a month's notice to present to us, and we got a community mobilized. Today, in 2011, we were designated. In 2016, some of you know Elena Officer from the World Health Organization. She called me to see how this age friendly is going. And I started talking about it as a strategy for prevention of elder abuse. And it seemed like that was, well, what she said, it was an aha moment. She was carrying two hats. And she's pushed this ever since. Anyhow, that advisory committee is still going. It's an official committee of the city of Waterloo, and I think I've sent links. It's worthwhile going. There's a directory, Aging Well directory, and I look back to what we had when I started, and we had some little file that we compiled, and that was our directory. And now you've got this massive online directory that older adults are using, and they're developing their 2027, 2030 action plan. So that's going well. The elder abuse team that I was part of, I would say that all of the pilots that I was part of, I mobilized community. I started at the bottom. I started with my colleagues, mobilizing the colleagues, get consent, and then go to the CEO and go to the chief of police to get action. Like, we need to be bold about this. We need to get people on board and then move ahead in a good way. So the project, we had funding from Trillium Foundation for the project, Law Commission of Canada, Justice Canada for evaluation. And I think that's going to be a report will be on the website. The key learning there is that we needed to have a broader perspective and that we needed to work as a community to understand why older adults are being abused, what's needed to repair the harm, and what is required of families, government to ensure prevention and resolution of elder abuse and communities. Like we all need to work together on this issue. And that evolved into the elder abuse response team, which was this broader perspective. And we formed a team with a memorandum of understanding with the police services and again with our CCAC. I worked with a detective constable, and we did joint investigations. And we had a mandate to work together, be guided by restorative justice principles. And as you can imagine, I was working with a police officer. I'm a nurse. We had different ideas. So it was good to have values and principles guiding our practice. And we worked very well together.
Those values and principles, Arlene, I just want to jump on that point because I think that's such an important thing. I was reflecting back to work that we asked you to come in on. I mean, that's an experience I think you've had many times in your life. You started something and people look over and say, oh, what are you doing over there? Which is one of the reasons why you're seeing so much stuff that we're putting in the chat here. And again, all of these links can also be sent to you. But you're seeing of some of the work that you've done, Arlene. It's a bit of a tour through some of your life, but in past and current, because those types of initiatives and projects are being looked at in California. They're being looked at in South and Latin America. They've been brought up to the United Nations level as leading practices. And some people said, well, elder abuse, you have to cut off all the relationships. This is a terrible type of thing. And you always brought your whole heart and your whole self to it and said, we have to be non-judgmental. We need to ask, what are the problems we're trying to solve for? And if a person wants to have a cutoff, that's one thing, but so often these are complex relationships and sometimes communities that also need to be healed. I'm going to take that piece, I'm going to pull it a little bit up. Arlene and Margaret, you worked on that age-friendly stuff, past, present. You've got that future, and I want to pull that age-friendly and take it into the United Nations as well, if I can. We worked a long time. We had a big idea. The big idea was we want a UN convention on the rights of an older persons. Listen, there's no bigger idea on the global United Nations stage than a convention. That's the sort of ultimate goal. And I think there was a lot of people that said the same thing that they said to Elizabeth Podniak when she said, we're going to have a day called WEAAD. And we said, that's not even a very good acronym. No, we're going to call it WEAAD, and we're going to have everyone across the country celebrate it. No, everyone around the world. No, the United Nations celebrate it. And we thought she was just inspiring, maybe a little bit overly optimistic, but we had that same conversations. Let's get a convention, the hardest, most difficult thing to do, and get every country in the world to sign on for it. And Margaret put her hand up and said, sure, that sounds like something I want to not just get involved in, but why not also help to lead? Margaret, what's our present and what's in the future? Help us to take into our what's next, as well as you tell us where we are now.
Sure. I worked in government, as I mentioned earlier, and I always was surprised by the fact that we talked about the rights of women, and we talked about the rights of children, and we talked about the rights of persons with disability, and all of these are good things, and all of them have conventions. No one in government ever talked about the rights of older persons. It was that kind of paternalistic, we're giving you something, sort of attitude. And I have to say, it always drove me crazy, and it is so deeply embedded in ageism. I mean, it's just, the reason. So out of that experience in government, I thought about that, and I started ILC Canada partially to address that as a human rights organization and to focus on the human rights. I'm really proud of our advocacy, and I say our because it has grown. I'm happy to say across all of the national organizations on aging in Canada have become involved. At one of our meetings at the United Nations, we had the largest contingent of NGOs And in 1 year, we were 1/4 of the new arrivals at the UN. So I have to say, our country has really grabbed onto this, and we should, because our country has always been a leader in human rights. That is why I have a real problem with the fact that the government is not fully supporting the convention. They're doing kind of, behind the scenes support, like they said we should make sure that NGOs can come to the UN. Only, gee, that's sort of obvious. And I think we've got to really start pushing them. And I think we have done a couple of really good things. About 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting at the Senate, an event at the Senate, thanks to Senator Greenwood and 7 other senators. Former Ambassador Bob Ray was there as our keynote speaker. And he really went to town on the government about their arguments against the convention, as saying, and I'm going to quote him here because I love it so much, "These are not arguments that fill my heart with pride. We all know what we need to do. And the big question for the government of Canada is, do you want to lead or not?" And he left that with them. Our initial work on the convention also led to the Canadian Coalition Against Ageism. And I think that was definitely a bold, age with bold and attitude in our advocacy. And I think, again, that's really grown. We now have 403 individuals and 109 organizations. And I think that is another key organization we can work to, really impact things. Do you want me to mention more on Age Friendly, or would you like to? I don't want to take too much time.
Actually, I just want to follow on to that as a little bit. How can organizations who are working like Dawn and like Arlene at that really local level, what information can they share with you so that make those best practices and those experiences of older persons at those really local levels, whether they be urban, suburban, rural, or remote? How can they tell their stories in an effective way so that you can help bring their voice up to shape the conversation at the international level, so we can get that incorporated meaningfully?
That is, there's a couple of ways that can be done. But the first way is, when we talk like this and we get questions and we hear about what the communities are doing, it gives us the ammunition when we go to the UN to say, here's what's happening in Canada on, is it healthcare? Is it on elder abuse? Is it on, pick a topic, CPP? What's happening in the country and the incredible explosion of homelessness of older persons. Those are the tools we need to say, we need a legally binding instrument that will empower us to make changes in those ways, the way that they have made changes for women and children and persons with disabilities. So I think hearing the stories and being able to bring them to the UN, and I think there's a real give and take on that, because what we then give back is once we get a convention, and we will, they're starting to draft it, then activists at all levels can go and hold Canada's feet to the fire at the United Nations. Every 5 years, there's a review. And I've seen that review used very effectively by Indigenous women, by children's advocates. And because it shows where the gaps are and it gives us a voice internationally and domestically. So I think that give and take's really, really vital.
I'm encouraging people to send us your questions. I'm just going to incorporate the questions in. You can put them into the chat or into the Q&A, but I want to dig into some of it and pulling on that thread right now, Moira. You've seen in particular the experiences of older women be reflected, I think, in society a bit more than it was before. Can you speak a little bit about what changes you've seen and what do you think we're going to get to kind of from the present to the future? How do you see the narratives that you're exploring right now resonate currently? And where do you think we're going to get to in terms of gender conversations and the needs of women as we all age?
So that was a conversation that I ended up having in my book. Again, I did not expect to go down that path, but as one does, the options for discussion are wide and quite fascinating. And it seemed to me that when I was interviewing women, a lot of them wanted to speak about intimacy in their lives and growing older. These are women who did not have a lot of money, and these were women who were financially fine. And so there's a universality to that, to all of that. And they wanted to talk about partnerships and falling in love again and intimacy. And so I had conversations about that. I had a conversation with you, Laura, in my book. And we sort of went down this path. What if, if women outlive men, how are we going to have, intimate relationships with each other? It was all sort of blue skying at the time, but it was quite a lively and fun conversation. And as I, did sort of book tours, it always came up in conversation as well with TV hosts. And so there's something really there that talks about the humanity of older people and how we don't really change as we get older. And I think that's a really important piece with so many people growing older, including the millennials and Gen X. This is something we will continue to talk about.
I think that conversation is great. I do want to out myself a little bit on this one. When she said, what do you think is a really interesting thing to talk about? And I said, I think you need to talk about sex and intimacy. And she said, I've been trying to find someone that's willing to do it. And I said, let me in. And that was actually just a confluence over a cup of coffee. And those confluence conversations over a cup of coffee, whether it's virtual or real, are really important because sometimes you find that you're thinking about the same things in different ways and you need those intersections, those moments to talk. We've got some questions and I'm going to bring a couple of them together around that financial piece. And I'm going to ask Dawn first and then move over to Arlene a little bit here as well. Dawn, can you just give us a little bit of a snapshot about what are the financial well-being? And you've got some disparities. You've got some ranges in your area of older adults in your communities and the communities that you're trying to support and serve. And can you speak a little bit about what it's like to try to live on a very low income? And then Arlene, I'm going to come to you and talk about communities and financial well-being and financial supports in a community. But let's just start with you at the individual level. Dawn, paint us a picture.
So I think that the challenges for most people with limited income is maintaining their own home, which is kind of a challenge because all of the homes in my county are old farmhouses or they're old seafaring houses. So they've been built way long ago. And we're not doing so great at encouraging affordable assistance, and whether it's somebody coming in to clean your house or somebody to help you fix your roof, that sort of stuff. It's a real challenge to get grants. It's a real challenge to stay in your home, but there's really nowhere else to go. And that can be certainly a challenge. And as far as the financial abuse stuff, that can also be difficult. The frauds and scams, like the minister was saying about her friend's parents or Judy. Like I see so many Judys. It's crazy. People who have to remortgage their house because they got caught up in a romance scam. And it's interesting that Moira brought that up too, because all of my seniors, a good chunk of them, are losing money because they're isolated and they're lonely and they get caught up in romance scams. Yeah.
And that connection, Moira, with what you're talking about, if you're alone, I mean, we often talk about small communities as taking care of themselves, but the average age of rural communities in Canada, 65% of rural communities are over 65. And in lots of communities, particularly resource-based communities that are not as active as they once were, it's not unusual for it to be more like 70 or even 75. And so if you don't have that intergenerational sets of supports, if all of you are experiencing aging within the same range, then frailty can fall into an entire community. And that means isolation can fall into an entire community. And that means neglect and self-neglect and mistreatment and predation. Arlene, you've dedicated your life to supporting and lifting up communities. What's coming up for you right now? And do you see moving forward, what are some of the things, say, in 20 years, if we do it right in communities, if we do that elder abuse prevention right, if we do some things right, how will communities be more resilient against elder abuse and neglect? Give us a bit of hope here. Oh, you were going to, my hearing's bad, but I think you just need to unmute yourself, my dear.
Sorry.
Not at all.
Sorry. I'm going to say, I'm giving you a little bit of hope. So yesterday afternoon, I had a conversation with Dr. David Burns to talk about the RISE project and his use of the terminology around restorative justice and all of that. And, they've moved to relational and healing and all of that. But what the end of the conversation is, could a restorative justice process be one of the resources that the RISE program provided? And I think he encouraged me to come out of retirement. I'm not doing that, but I will encourage him and all of you to proceed with something like that, because that's such a comprehensive response to elder abuse involving the whole community. And that's what we need to do. We need to bring in our community members. And then there are times I am still an advocate of bringing people together to try and resolve this in a good way. And I would also say, I think in the chat, there's going to be a reference to Chris Marshall from New Zealand, who talked to me over coffee and then went back to New Zealand and developed this project using restorative justice for elder abuse. And it's published in the Journal of Elder Abuse and Neglect. So
those international opportunities of connecting communities are important and part of that digital world. I've got 5 questions, all asking something about digital, online, and AI. I always feel like there should be a stamp that says "now with AI" in every conversation. I'm amazed we've gotten into the last 6 minutes without talking about AI. I'm going to bring some of those pieces together. And Margaret, I'm going to come to you a little bit. You spend a lot of your time working digitally, right? Because we're in a global conversation. It's a great privilege to get on a plane and go to Geneva or to New York, but most of the work isn't being done all in a room with, just under 200 countries. Can you speak a little bit about what are the conversations around the needs for digital literacy, the worries and opportunities of AI? How are we thinking around a UN convention around digital inclusion? Is that part of the conversation?
You're onto something, that's a bit of the Wild West, Laura, because I think our convention, as it moves forward, will probably be the first one that's going to be addressing AI. And of course, because of the incredible elder abuse that has happened online, and, as one of our other speakers mentioned earlier, the fear of what AI will do in terms of, the ability to replicate the voice of your grandchild, or, make it sound like your kid's in jail wherever they are, and, you need to send your life savings to fix it. All of that stuff is kind of bubbling up. So I think it's going to be very interesting conversations as we move forward on how we will deal with that. And I have to say, I am so conflicted on the whole issue of AI because I'm slightly addicted to it. I quite love it. But on the other hand, it kind of freaks me out because, the stuff you used to ask Google for will come up in 20 seconds, And also just a little advisory here. I Googled the beginnings of Age Friendly, which of course I was there. And it had all kinds of stuff that wasn't true. It had the wrong years. It had people I've never heard of, So, you also have to kind of watch. You have to know your issue well enough to know when you're getting, even on something sort of basic like that. So who knows? Maybe somebody wrote a report that had the wrong years in it and it came up on AI. Who knows? But there's a cautiousness that you always have to take with it. And I think it's going to be fun writing that up in the first UN convention.
I think so as well. And just to wrap our conversation, the fact is we are able to have this conversation because we're digital, but unless people have training and supports in order to get connected online, you're not going to be able to do this. And so like everything else, it's a multifaceted approach, but we can't just say, oh, you'll figure it out. No, there has to be learning. I know, Dawn, you've been involved in making sure that there's digital literacy in your areas, sometimes when there's not even much in terms of actual fiber. I'm going to get you to talk about that, and then I'm going to ask our friends Rayanne and Benedict to help us wrap up. But Dawn, last word to you. You're in an area of different ages. You're in a rural area. What are you thinking is needed on digital literacy for seniors, in particularly your community?
Oh, well, we do a lot of stuff, just how to use the internet, how to identify if it's a safe website, how to know what to share and like, what's a safe thing to do, what's an unsafe thing to do. We're trying to teach them how to do things properly, just because, everything right now is directing us to the internet, and that can be a challenge. You know what, we were talking this morning, a friend of mine, seniors are used to having newspapers And we don't even have that anymore, right?
No,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
And the news of the day
Education.
right now, I certainly understand lots of people. It's really hard when algorithms are feeding you different information. It used to be that you got the same information. You may not like it, but you would have reporters like Moira that you'd say, I know I can trust this voice. And now you both have the opportunity to hear from a wide diversity of issues, but sometimes the algorithm catches you and you get into a bubble as well. And that's why it's important. I'm going to pick up a book, because that, at least, is going to be there. I am so appreciative of all of you today to coming and sharing in the chat. It's been so vibrant. Again, you'll see the links being sent out to you. We put a ton of information in there as well, constantly. We want to make sure that you also can spread the word of what you're doing for World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. And with that, I'm turning over to our honoree, Rayanne Rideout, to wrap us up in a good way and talk about how you can help to support and promote World Elder Abuse Awareness Day on June 15th, and some resources available to you. And with that, I'm going to thank our panel and excuse you from the screens, and over to you, Rayanne, with our great gratitude and appreciation. We're giving you the last word, but the second last word is another congratulations from me.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone on the panel for such an engaging conversation. I think there's so much more to be spoken about all of the issues that we were addressing on the panel. And this is just the beginning of the discussion. So perhaps in the September, when we reunite again to host of our webinars, summer is kind of a break time. We'll bring back some of our panel members. And I was privileged to actually interview Moira with her book on our podcast. So it's a great book, excellent information, lots of things to think about. I know I'm starting to think about information, about planning my financial future as well as my children, because I don't think we think about that as we grow older. So lots of great tidbits in there. And my experience working with all of the panel members, with Arlene, goes way back. So I appreciate everyone coming today to share your wealth of knowledge and information with us. And in saying that, wrapping up, as Laura mentioned, we don't host this on June 15th because we know people are out in their communities informing seniors to prevent elder abuse, recognizing some of the tips. So we do have a lot of resources on our website that are available in English and French that you can go and download, free, and social posts. So if you don't need to create them, you can just download them and share them on your sites. Trying to make it as easy as possible for helping you to promote with your organization or just personally to get that messaging out. So please take advantage of looking at that information and do your part in promoting the rights and informing, whether it's in a community organization or within your family members. Talk about what you learned today at this event today to pass along the message. Every little piece of information and support helps go a long way. Again, as Margaret's worked with the International Longevity Center, please visit that website with the Canadian Coalition Against Ageism. Lots of information and tools and resources in that area and its ongoing work. So participate, join the newsletter so you get ongoing information about what's happening across Canada. I did post these in the chat box, but for our partners, their websites, depending on the jurisdiction that you're in, please take time to look them up. If you can't remember, the Canadian Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse website has the links to all of these organizations under the Get Help section. You can find your local contacts within your region. I do want to extend a huge gratitude to our moderator, to Laura. She does a tremendous job bringing us all together and having these discussions. So I do thank you, Laura, on the bottom of our hearts, to facilitate these WEAAD events every year. Unfortunately, Benedict is at an airport catching a plane. So we do acknowledge that if anyone would like to make donations to either of our organizations, we do appreciate your support, as we know that funding is always much appreciated to continue on the efforts, the work that we do. And lastly, that one piece of information we always like to ask is evaluation. So again, I indicated there will be a pop-up when you leave the session. If you want to scan the QR code, or we'll send you a follow-up email link. We do appreciate your feedback. It does help us plan our further events. So thank you again for everyone joining. Be bold, age with the dignity, age with attitude, and get the messaging out for this year. So thank you again, and hope you have enjoyed the rest of your day. And post your activities, tag us on your WEAAD events, and we will do our best to follow and repost the work that you're doing. So thank you to our ASL interpreters, as usual, doing a great job trying to keep up to our pace. So I appreciate it. And thank you for everybody attending. Have a great day.